Yeah. So the first article we want to take a look at is Article 3. Everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of the person. Now, this, of course, is probably a little bit obvious of why we brought this up, but we wanted to take some time to maybe really look at what the article means by the idea of the right to life, liberty, and security of a person. Around the world today, hopefully, it's pretty clear that not everyone has the freedom to make decisions in their life, aka that idea of liberty. Um, Now more than ever, we can see the idea of security of the person has definitely been a threat with different wars that are happening around the world. And this idea of the right to life, right? The idea that, um, for me, I guess the right to life is that idea that you have the right to live your life kind of similar to liberty, I guess. Live your life the way that you want to live it, right? Um, with respect to your own life in connection to other people's lives. Does that make
Yeah,
sense to you,
yeah,
Jordan? Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Like you, yeah,
yeah. So it's those three things, right? The idea of life, liberty, and security, um, that are going to be a common theme, I think it's fair to say, throughout the different articles that we're going to be bringing up today. Um, those core values that are all throughout the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and arguably what the United Nations stands for, um, are something that we're going to constantly be reflecting on. But
yeah.
hopefully that
They're coming
becomes
up.
a little bit clearer as we continue. I don't know, Jordan. Was there anything that you wanted to add to that?
I think no, you covered it pretty well. I think,
All right.
like you said, there's going to be those three themes are going to reoccur throughout the rest of the articles. So it's just kind of
Yes.
good to make a mental note that life, liberty, and just kind of keep that in mind as we go through this because they'll kind of be subliminally written
Yes.
or at
Yeah.
least
There's
connected
always a
to.
connection point.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. But yeah, do you want to take away
Yeah, I
with
was going to say the
our
next
second article?
articles.
Yeah.
I was going to say the next ones. We also picked Article 5 to look at. No one shall be subjugated to torture or to cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment or punishment. So right there we have back up to your Article 3 where we have security of the person.
Hmm.
And that's one of those things where
Yeah. I
it
think
falls into that category.
exactly. Yeah. I think it's another one of those ones where hopefully, no matter what side of the aisle, so to speak, you kind of fall on in terms of your politics or where you live in
Your
the world in
views,
terms,
yeah.
yeah, so your personal perspective from that side of things, you have seen on either your own side or the other side where this idea of torture or cruel and inhumane or degrading
Just
treatment and
just general
punishment,
mistreatment, yeah.
yeah, of others, right? Like it doesn't always have to be that quote unquote waterboarding type of situation. Sometimes it
It takes
is,
other forms, yeah.
yeah, right. Like so, and I think that's, I think it's obviously something that we're going to kind of repeat, but I think it's an important point to be made that a lot of these rights that we are seeing in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, are somewhat open ended in the way that they are approached, right? Um,
Yeah.
so, right,
That's
the
a
idea
very
of
that
torture,
one itself, yeah, is very
yeah,
open. It's a very open
yeah,
article, right?
right. We always jump to this idea of, I don't know, like a James Bond film for like torture and like
Yeah.
when they're torturing James Bond type of
Yeah.
thing.
Well, as you
But
say, you could have someone like in what's it called? Russell Crowe in like A Beautiful Mind, where like someone who's schizophrenic thinks that being treated as torture sometimes. So it's like,
sure, yeah.
yeah,
Right,
like
like,
how
so
do you
there's
define?
different
Yeah,
degrees to that, and
yeah,
obviously, uh, to your example of A Beautiful Mind, um, the perception of torture is not necessarily what we wanna focus on,
focus on,
right?
yeah.
So some people feel that they have been tortured by X, Y, and Z,
If
um,
that's
And that's something that you always have to navigate. But for the most part, we really want to focus on where um, the treatment of people, right, especially that degrading treatment or punishment. Um, Whenever you look at kind of occupied territories or certain populations within different nations that are
Indigenous
treated as less
populations.
than,
Yeah.
yeah, there can be very diverse levels of that, right?
Yeah.
You could make the argument of during World War II in not or prior to World War II, Nazi Germany, the treatment of Jewish people before even the Holocaust in terms of uh, like gas chamber, that type of like concentration camps, even just the treatment of uh, Jewish businesses could be made the argument of that degrading treatment, the punishment based off of just nothing
Yeah.
other than being who you are, right?
Well, and I think to your point too, like the problem with the open-endedness is it leaves it
Hmm.
into like to both extremes, where it's one extreme
Yeah.
or like it's like, oh, it's like it's like you can't, it's like, oh, you can't wear a mask, you have to wear a mask. It's just, well, that's torture. I don't like that. It's
Yeah.
like,
When
so it's
people
like,
jump to those extremes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah, but yeah,
Yeah.
just to support
No,
your point, yeah,
it
show
it's
how
a great
open,
point because I
because
think
that's
it
yeah, people leave it open to interpretation
definitely.
as
And
they see it. Yeah,
I think going off of that, again, I'm sure this is gonna be another theme that kinda comes up.
yeah,
But because some of these are a little bit more open-ended and can be left to some degree of interpretation, Um, we also run into situations where that's why some of these rights are not being upheld
hmm,
because there can be the debate on whether was that torture, was that not torture, was that inhumane, was that not inhumane,
yeah,
degrading or not degrading, right? Um, but yeah, not to get too hung up on Article
that one,
5.
yeah,
Hopefully, that one is relatively clear to a lot of our listeners that around the world, maybe in your own countries, these these acts or these intentions are sometimes uh, a little bit debatable, but there's definitely some degree of cruel and inhumane and degrading treatment that happens
yeah.
all around the world. And a good reminder is that, as you said, Jordan, 193 countries. I believe you had mentioned that.
Or
Yeah,
yeah, in
193
members,
states
yeah.
uh, all belong to the United Nations, and that
Yeah.
is by far the vast majority of the countries that exist in
Yeah, I'm
our
pretty
world.
sure, yeah, it's like there's
Yeah,
very like 7 or 8.
yeah, yeah, and those are just ones that are debated on whether they're recognized. But
Yeah, or
with
there's so
that
new, yeah.
being said, we'll move on to our next article,
Yep.
Article 13.